Hello and welcome to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. In this session, we're going to have a look at a very modern film. It's called Mickey 17. And if you haven't seen it, I won't be spoiling too much of it for you, but certainly it's worth a look, if for no other reason than the unusual use of colour. Before we begin, however, I'd like to thank you for attending this particular session. And if you're new here, if you've just stumbled across the channel, you're very, very welcome to remain and listen to some of the interesting things that come out of a colour analysis of a modern day film. This is going to be a fairly short analysis because there aren't very many colours to analyse in this film, but nevertheless it does offer some interesting insights into the way in which colour is used in the 21st century. So let's begin, shall we? Let's first, though, look at some of the background information. The film itself was developed from a 2022 novel called Mickey 7 by a gentleman named Edward Ashton. The film adaptation of Mickey 17 by acclaimed director Bong Joon-ho was released in 2025, so it's this year's film. Criticism of the film, however, compared Joon-ho's previous body of work to this one, and for the consensus of most people, it comes up a little lacking. Nevertheless, I found it rather enjoyable, and if you haven't seen it, I dare say you might also. The consensus from the film critics was that Joon-ho has returned to his forte of daffy science fiction films with a withering social critique, whereas the audience review says that this satirically saucy Mickey 17 eschews subtlety and embraces a convoluted plot that, even when it drags, is still weird and interesting, and might I say, entertaining. The film itself, however, comes with a number of features and also warnings. For a start, it was rated R for its violent content, language throughout, sexual content, and drug material. The sexual content was both depicted as real and also in the form of stick figures. And there is partial nudity and some very suggestive dialogue. In terms of language, there is profanity and explicit language in moments of frustration, tension, and humour. Drug use shows some futuristic drug use for coping and for recreation. And the violence and gore is actual and simulated as well as implied. There are intense sci-fi action scenes, including battles with alien creatures and conflicts between the human characters themselves. Cloning and disposability of human bodies results in some graphic depictions of injuries and deaths, and suicide, murder, and attempted murder are all featured in the film. As well as this, we have psycho-emotional violence depicted as characters grapple with existential crises and ethical dilemmas. So let's examine some of the characters, and I'm presenting these in the order in which they appear. Not all characters are portrayed, only those that have important aspects that relate to the plot itself. Firstly, we have Mickey Barnes. Now, in this particular film, he appears firstly as Mickey 17 and then later on as Mickey 18. And then we have Dorothy, a compassionate scientist who plays an important role in the linking of the aliens with humans. Timo is Mickey's fair weather friend who got him into the problem of having to volunteer for the trip to space and the particular planet called Niflheim in the first place. And then we have Kenneth Marshall. He's a cult leader and a failed politician who leads the expedition. Ilfa Marshall is the power behind the throne, and she also is a would-be gourmand. Nasha is a security agent, as is Kai, who is also considered to be a potential uterus for the colonisation project that Kenneth Marshall has decided upon. And then lastly, but not at the least important, are the creepers themselves. We don't really get to see any of these very clearly, but they nevertheless show themselves to have quite a number of startling characteristics. Now, the plot's timeline moves backwards and forwards from the now to the past and then also into the future towards the end. It begins with Niflheim, where Mickey, 17, has been left for dead after having fallen down a crevasse. There is an explanation of the clone printing process that Mickey 17's character narrates. And as well, there is a flashback to Earth where Mickey and Timo have joined the expedition. There are many thousands of people all lined up wanting to join this expedition in order to leave Earth for various reasons. And while Timo was able to create a job for himself, the only one that was available to Mickey was to become what is known as an expendable. On board the spaceship, Mickey meets Nasha, and they form a relationship. Kenneth, Marshall, and Ilfo set laws for the trip, and these laws are to be obeyed under threat of severe punishment for infringement. Then we come back to Niflheim, where Mickey is found by the creepers and ejected from the underground cave system. On his way back to the spaceship, Mickey once again travels back in time to talk about the Earth Congress, which outlawed the whole process of cloning. Niflheim's Mickey's 17 and 18 meet and develop quite an antipathy towards one another. But while 17 is planning to do some harm to 18, he's taken away to dinner with the Marshalls, which Kai also attends. Now, she helps Mickey survive an attempt on his life, and after a failed seduction, Mickey returns to his room with Kai following, and she discovers 18's existence. She then accepts Nash's share plan for the two Mickeys. 18 takes off to attempt to assassinate Marshall. Following the melee, where one of the baby creepers is found in a rock that Marshall has just had hewn open, Dorothy observes that 17 is able to subdue the baby creeper by clicking to it. Nevertheless, all three, the two Mickeys and Nasha, are imprisoned, and Timo visits them in prison, and having been blackmailed into killing Mickey 17. Back in the science lab, Ilfa is experimenting with the creeper baby to make some sauce out of its tail. Both Mickeys are ordered to go out and collect more creeper tails on pain of death, and in fact, Ilfa toys with the idea of exploding both the Mickeys on a device that is being clasped to Kenneth Marshall's arm. Before they leave to find the creepers, Dorothy supplies Mickey 17 with a prototype communication device. 17 is able to talk with the mother creeper, and the desire that she has for the return of the baby still inside the spaceship. Marshall is convinced he should ride out and take charge of the elimination of the creepers who are now completely surrounding the spaceship. And while he's gone, Nasha manages to capture Ilfa, and in the process of releasing Ilfa, there is an agreement that the baby will be given to her so she can return it to the other creepers. 18 manages to catch up with Marshall and kills both himself and Marshall, and a grieving Ilfa then commits suicide. The plot now moves to 6 months into the future, where Nasha has become a member of council. Timo was exonerated for destroying the blackmailer. Kai has a new girlfriend. And Dorothy and the scientists observe an updated communications device which Mickey and the creepers are using to communicate with one another. Then Mickey is invited to destroy the printing machine, but instead hallucinates Ilfa printing out a new Marshall. So he detonates the device, and there it goes. So let's get into the colour analysis. As you may have already noticed, the film is deliberately hazy and dark, so that most of the action, most of the scenes are obscured throughout the film. It is fairly dark in most of the indoor scenes, and the outdoor scenes are also equally as hazy and difficult to discern individual characters and activities. One of the exceptions is the private apartments of the Marshalls, and also the post-Marshall era is filmed much lighter, and it is much more clearly able to discern the various characters within the film. What colours do exist are associated with the costumes associated with roles within the spaceship. For example, here we have the scientists clad in white. The officer guards are generally in a bluish grey. The workers are in a greenish grey. Decontamination suits are all in yellow. And the council membership offers people the opportunity to wear red robes. So before we actually analyse the colours of the characters' costumes, we need to note that grey is the main colour used for both costumes and the environment. This establishes an otherworldliness of the storyline. It also links to the sameness and unremarkable characteristics of the protagonists, be they human or alien. It produces feelings of enforced isolation amidst some fairly crowded spaces. And finally, the grey also reduces the autonomy of individuals on the spacecraft, but also encourages compliant activities. And there is an argument to be made that this also applies to the creepers. Of the male characters, Marshall is the one with the most colourful costumes. He's wearing brown and black for his onboard speech that enables people to be given the rules of the voyage. He's wearing blue, white, and red in the flashback to Earth, where he is making an argument for allowing the human clone printer to be taken off planet. At the dinner that he hosts for Mickey 17, he's wearing red and brown. And there is black and white for a cult speech that he makes further into the film. And finally, he's wearing blue, yellow, and red prior to his ill-fated extermination trip outdoors to eliminate the creepers. So what does that tell us about the colours? Well, brown is associated with self-serving activities. It is designed to impress his vision upon others without necessarily giving away too much of his own personal ambitions. Black is linked to stability and orthodoxy. It indicates strength through his speeches and also his role as the cult leader. Red is used sparsely on Marshall's costumes. It's a tie and medals, and these are both linked to power. Blue is all about persuasive language, whether it is he who is doing the persuading or whether he is being persuaded by his PR team. And white denotes innocence and purity of his intention, but deflects from the hidden agenda because we don't see a lot of white, just touches of it, mainly on his black costumes. And in total, his costume colours tend to suggest elements of power, ambition, but also his irrelevance, because his colours are not bright enough to attain too much attention to him. The most colourful character on the spaceship is Ilfa. She wears pink, as she guides Marshall's original onboard speech, where he is revving up the crew and also doling out the laws and rules for the journey. She's wearing a different colour pink at the dinner, and when she is experimenting with the creeper tail to try and turn it into some sort of sauce, she is wearing yellow. And finally, we see her in red as she is hallucinated by Mickey 17 when she is supposedly printing out a new Kenneth Marshall for her own needs. Now, Ilfr's colours offer us a little more information for analysis. The two different shades of pink are associated with love and adoration, and she demonstrates this throughout. She really loves and adores her husband, even though she has input into his ambitions and leads him along certain pathways, encouraging him in what he wants to say to people. The brighter the colour indicates a stronger intention. A very pale pink would have meant that she played a minor role, but these vibrant colours that she wears in the pink field are all about her intentions as much as his. They also demonstrate her determined mind and the power of suggestion that she uses to gain her own goals. When she's wearing yellow, there is more a situation of intellectual curiosity. It also indicates a total disregard of the suffering of others or other creatures in pursuit of her personal agenda, which, of course, as a gourmand, is all about flavour of food. In the final scene where she's in red, there is a dual reference to her suicide because of the colour, but also to self-empowerment. Here, she's taking control of the machine and she is printing herself a second husband. So in total, Ilfr's colours show us a woman who is manipulative, hedonistic, single-minded, and highly ambitious. Now, there are only two other women whose colours are of importance to the script. The first is Nasha. She is seen initially in her grey staff uniform, and then she's wearing grey and blue when she's convincing Kai to refrain from exposing that Mickey is now a multiple. Later on, she's wearing grey as she's preventing the assassination of Marshall, and in white, in one of the flashbacks, we see her comforting one of the Mickeys as they are dying. And finally, she appears in a red robe as one of the council members. Kai, on the other hand, is wearing black and red in her failed seduction of Mickey 17, and also while she's negotiating access to Mickey 17. Later, we see her in a blue outfit as she's destroying the first of the baby creepers that has come out of the rock that was split by Marshall's crew. And after that, she returns to her grey uniform. So the colours of these two women have fairly similar readings. The grey indicates routine compliance with everyday tasks and instructions. The blue is recognition of danger and the appropriate response. In the case of Nasha, it's persuading Kai to keep the 17-18 Mickey's secret. And both Natasha and Kai recognise the risk to Marshall and intervene to save his life. White is only worn by Nasha, and it's demonstrating her compassion for the dying Mickey. And finally, red, also only worn by Nasha, is an elevation to council and her potential ambitions to lead. And that brings us to a summary of the colours of this particular film. Grey is all about ambience and everyday drudgery, whether that be in terms of the scenery or in terms of the uniforms worn by the colonists. White denotes both experimentation and discovery, and hence it is very important for the scientists, but also has some import for Marshall. Black is all about hidden ambition, and this is primarily a colour worn by Marshall because it is his ambitions that are being brought to fruition in the journey to Niflheim. Pink indicates a hedonistic manipulator, and this, of course, is through and through Ilfa. Red indicates power that is both self-granted but also accrued as a result of activities that have been performed by the individual. In the case of Marshall, it's all self-given, but in the case of Nasha, it's one that is given to her. Yellow is awareness of danger and careful investigation to see what it is that you can accomplish from that dangerous situation. It's both the outfits worn to prevent contamination, but also it is the garments worn by Ilfa when she is experimenting with the creeper's body. And finally, blue is all about persuasion, whether that be Marshall persuading the Earth councillors to allow him to take people off planet, or whether it is Nash's attempt to persuade Kai not to reveal the Mickey's secret, or whether it is Kai's own attempts to prevent the creeper attack on Marshall by persuading it to keep its distance through firing a gun at it. And there we have it, a colour analysis of a rather intriguing film. Certainly the concepts of the film are intriguing. The colours offer some interesting insights into the characters. I hope that if you haven't actually seen the film yourself, that you will enjoy it sometime in the near future. Until next time, may the colour information that you gain from these sessions help you to understand the motivations that you have in your own life. Catch you later. Bye.